Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernst Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The Kentucky Wildcats, they need a ton of basketball players to transfer to their program right now. Because with John Calipari leaving Kentucky to go to the Arkansas Razorbacks, he took a ton of players with him, and Kentucky's roster is absolutely depleted. But Mark Pope, the new head basketball coach at Kentucky, he's trying to fix that problem, and he just landed a pretty solid transfer portal addition in former Drexel center Amari Williams. I'm going to go over whether Amari Williams is a solid start to Kentucky's transfer portal recruiting class and whether I think that Mark Pope has any shot to build a roster for next season that Kentucky fans will be happy with. Now, a lot of Kentucky fans, we know they've been upset at John Calipari. They like the fact that he brought in a bunch of talented players, and those guys went off to the NBA. But once they started to not win at as high of a level as they were earlier in John Calipari's tenure, the one-and-done method was not good enough for Kentucky fans. They wanted him to build a roster that would have some of those one-and-dones, but then have guys that would stay at Kentucky for 3 or 4 years, or just bring in some transfers that would have a lot of experience like some of these other teams do, like UConn, who brought in a guy in Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton through the transfer portal, and UConn ended up winning a title 2 years back-to-back. It's just the day and age we live in college basketball right now, where you have to have the perfect blend of players to have a lot of success. The only issue I'm worried about with Mark Pope, though, is that he's going to be able to bring in some of these more experienced players, because Amari Williams, he's got a lot of experience. The only issue is he's not going to be bringing in all of those five-star talented players that John Calipari was able to land. But we'll have to see if Mark Pope is going to be able to build a decent roster for next season so Kentucky fans will not be frustrated. And Amari Williams, he's a really solid player, but the only caveat is that he is still technically declared for the NBA draft, and he has not backtracked on that yet. So Amari Williams, Kentucky is going to have to wait on him on whether he's going to end up coming back to college or not. Now, if I had to guess, I would say Amari Williams is not going to go off to the NBA and that he is going to come back to college basketball, but still the fact Kentucky has to wait on him while they're trying to build the rest of their roster out, and they need a ton of guys. So it would just be nice for them to have Amari Williams coming into the program, and they know he's coming to Kentucky, but it is what it is for the Wildcats. I still think Amari Williams will come back to college basketball, but that is a small caveat. But Joe Tipton tweeted out Drexel transfer Amari Williams is committed to Mark Pope in Kentucky. The 6'10" forward/center is a 3-time CAA Defensive Player of the Year, and he boasts a 7'5" wingspan. He's got a lot of upside still, even though he is an older player. He's a senior. He's from England, 6'10", 265 pounds, and if you look at what he has done in college basketball over 4 seasons, in his first 3 years, he improved every single season, averaging 13 points per game by his junior year. But then this past season as a senior, he did average a few less points and a rebound less, but still, I wouldn't hold that against him. I still think he can be a guy that can play at a high major level, but he only shot 65% at the free throw line this past season. That's tough. He did shoot 33% from 3 and 52% from the field. So you would like him to be a more efficient player, considering the fact he is 6'10" and he was playing at a smaller school, but he also averaged 2 blocks per game. So he's got that defensive presence. But the problem for Kentucky is that Amari Williams is nowhere near enough for what they're going to need for next season. Look at all the players Kentucky is losing. I'm not kidding around when I'm saying that Kentucky basketball is absolutely depleted. All Kentucky has coming back from this past year's team is 4 players that did not even play this past season. And then you look at the Kentucky players that are gone and they're not coming back for the Wildcats. Reed Sheppard is declared for the draft. Big Z, he's transferred to Arkansas. Ugonna Yensu has declared for the draft. DJ Wagner's in the portal. Rod Dillingham's declared for the draft. Aaron Bradshaw has transferred to Ohio State. Adu Thero's in the portal. Joey Hart's transferred to Ball State. Justin Edwards is declared for the draft. Antonio Reeves is out of eligibility. Trey Mitchell's out of eligibility. Jordan Burks is in the transfer portal. Have you ever seen a college basketball team lose this many players in the offseason? If this was football, this would be normal. Football teams lose 20, 30 guys sometimes every offseason, but this is unbelievable. unbelievable. The entire Kentucky roster that played significant minutes this past season, they are all gone. And all Kentucky has in their recruiting class right now is Colin Chandler, a guy that was committed to BYU, but he hasn't played yet. He is going to be a freshman this year, even though he is an older guy than a typical freshman. So that's solid for Kentucky that Colin Chandler decided to follow Mark Pope from BYU to the Wildcats. And then Travis Perry, he is still committed to the Kentucky Wildcats. The lone signee from John Calipari's 5-star recruiting class, ranked the number 2 class in college basketball that Kentucky had. At least Travis Perry is staying committed, deciding to stay in his home state. But all those other great players Kentucky had committed to their program for next season, I was even talking about all those players, including Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, tons of great players. They're all gone. They're going to other programs, and they're not coming back to Kentucky. Boogie Fland as well. A lot of those guys are probably going to end up going to Arkansas. But Kentucky, they need a lot more players than just Colin Chandler, Travis Perry, and Amari Williams. These are some of the other guys that Kentucky is looking at in the transfer portal right now. Aiden Mahaney, that would be a solid addition for Mark Pope, because Aiden Mahaney, even though he did not play at the high major level, he still was a very solid guard for St. Mary's the last couple years. Randy Bennett's squad is losing a really good player. I think Aiden Mahaney still has NBA upside. That's a huge loss for the Gales, and I think he would be a good fit at Kentucky if he decided to transfer there. Sean Padula as well from Virginia Tech will be a solid transfer portal addition for Kentucky if they could land him. If you had Sean Padula and Aiden Mahaney in the backcourt, that wouldn't be the worst backcourt in the world for Kentucky. It definitely wouldn't be as talented as the guards John Calipari has had, but you really can't do wrong with those two guys because of the fact they are experienced guards and they have had a lot of success in college basketball, even in the NCAA tournament. BJ Freeman from Milwaukee would not be a bad player for Kentucky, but he was from a smaller school. Clifford Omarui from Rutgers, that's an interesting player. I think it will be tough for Kentucky to land him, considering the fact that they just got Amari Williams for Drexel. So it would be kind of tough for Mark Pope to convince him to come to Kentucky because they already have their center. Kate Tyson, the forward from Belmont, he would not be a bad player at the wing position for the Wildcats, because if you have Amari Williams down low and then Sean Padula and Aiden Mahaney in the backcourt, then Kate Tyson out there stroking threes from the outside because he's a good three-point shooter. Not a bad starting lineup for the Kentucky Wildcats, but still just a lot less talented. But some of these other players that Kentucky was looking at, they signed with other programs, just like Ali Khalifa. He was at BYU this past season, and he did not go to Kentucky. He went to Louisville. That was a big loss for Mark Pope, because if he had gone to Kentucky, that would have been big for them. But he did redshirt at Louisville, so he's not going to play for Louisville this next season, but still, that would have been big for Kentucky to land him. Then they're looking at Kobe Bray from Dayton. He's a really good three-point shooter, but again, played at a smaller school. Chris Parker from Alabama. He's got a lot of eligibility left. He could help out at the 4 position. But those are some of the players Kentucky is looking at. If I had to guess, I would think that they're going to land at least half of those players because they need a ton of players. The only thing I'm worried about, though, is that, yes, a lot of those guys have experience and they are solid players. They just aren't as talented as the guys Kentucky is used to bringing in. It's going to be a shell shock for the Wildcats fans next season when they look at the team and they're not talking about one and dones. They're not talking about guys going off to the NBA, and they're not going to be watching explosive plays and guys dunking all over the gym. It's just going to be a different style of basketball. Guys like Aiden Mahaney and Sean Padula, if they go to Kentucky, they're good players. I like their style of play. I think they would help out the Wildcats be a solid team next season and have it where Kentucky doesn't have a major drop-off where they're just a horrible team next season. Kay Tyson as well. But they're just different type players than Kentucky is used to bringing in under John Calipari. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens throughout the rest of this transfer portal offseason in college basketball and which players Kentucky ends up being able to land in the transfer portal. There's still some solid players they're looking at. I think they're even also looking at Sean Stewart from Duke as well, so he's a pretty talented player. If Kentucky can land him, that can help out in the backcourt. And Amari Williams, as long as he doesn't go off to the NBA, he's going to be a solid addition in the front court for the Wildcats. But whatever happens, Kentucky basketball just cannot fall off a cliff or the Wildcats fans are going to be absolutely irate. I think that Mark Pope is a good coach and that he's going to do everything that he possibly can to help the Wildcats be a solid team next season. He used to play at Kentucky back in the 90s. I know he wants to win here, but there's a lot of expectations. And with the guys that Kentucky is probably going to be landing in this offseason and the guys that they've already landed, including Amari Williams, I'm not sure just yet whether Kentucky basketball is going to be good enough next season to fit the Wildcats fans' rabid expectations. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, whether you think that Amari Williams is a good addition for the Kentucky Wildcats if he decides to play play for the Wildcats next season and not go to the NBA draft, and whether you are a believer that Mark Pope can build a roster full of good enough players that can help the Wildcats be a good team next season in college basketball that will make the Wildcats fans happy. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.